Okay, so you want to own a McDonald's? You picture the golden arches glowing beside a busy road, cars wrapped around the drive-thru, breakfast orders starting before sunrise, burgers leaving the kitchen every few seconds. The brand is already famous. The menu already exists. Customers already know what to order. From the outside, it feels like you are buying a restaurant where demand is already waiting at the door. Then the first payments begin leaving your bank account. Equipment, employees, food, advertising, technology, insurance, repairs, debt, rent, and a continuing percentage of sales. Some of those payments grow when business is strong. Others stay painful when business slows down. That is the central reality of owning a McDonald's. You are buying the right to operate a high-volume restaurant inside someone else's brand, property, supply chain, technology, and contract system. The restaurant collects the money, but a lot of people get paid before you find out what is actually left for you. Before you even calculate the investment, you have to decide which McDonald's you are imagining. A small location inside an airport is not the same business as a freestanding suburban restaurant with 2 drive-through lanes. A rural restaurant attached to a fuel station has different traffic, hours, staffing, and property economics. A brand new restaurant also creates a very different financial bet from an established location with years of sales history. For this scenario, let's use the version most people picture. A traditional freestanding McDonald's in the United States with a dining room, drive-through, breakfast service, digital ordering, and an established customer base. You are not creating the location from scratch and choosing any building you like. McDonald's controls the franchise opportunity, the operating system, the approved products, and, in many conventional franchise arrangements, the underlying restaurant property. The company's latest annual report explains that conventional franchisees generally receive the right to operate the restaurant and use the facility for a term that is usually 20 years. When that period ends, McDonald's still controls the underlying real estate and decides what happens next. That changes what you are actually purchasing. You may own the restaurant business, equipment, inventory, and certain operating assets. You do not own the McDonald's name. You do not get to redesign the menu around your personal ideas. You do not get to replace approved ingredients with cheaper alternatives because you found a better deal. And if you get tired of burgers, you cannot simply turn the building into a different restaurant. The franchise agreement gives you access to an operating system. It does not give you unlimited control over the property or the brand. The application process starts long before you receive the keys. McDonald's says it generally requires at least $500,000 in non-borrowed personal resources before it will consider a U.S. franchise candidate. That is not necessarily the full down payment. It is definitely not the total investment. It is the amount that shows you may have enough personal capital to even enter the conversation. The training commitment can also be substantial. Franchise disclosure information describes a candidate development process that may take approximately 6 months to 2 years, moving through restaurant leadership and operational training. Franchisees are expected to provide full-time attention and personal supervision to the business. This is not designed to be a passive investment that you casually check from another state. Now look at the cost of getting inside. The $45,000 franchise fee is the number people usually remember because it is simple. Compared with the price of the complete restaurant, that fee is relatively small. The latest available franchise disclosure figures list a total estimated investment from roughly $525,000 to $2,728,000 across formats ranging from smaller satellite locations to traditional restaurants. A traditional restaurant alone is generally estimated at approximately $1,471,000 to $2,728,000. The largest cost is usually not the right to display the logo. It is the physical system required to produce thousands of consistent orders. You need kitchen equipment that can handle breakfast, lunch, dinner, late-night demand, delivery orders, mobile orders, and drive-through traffic. Grills, fryers, refrigeration, freezers, beverage systems, preparation stations, storage, digital menu boards, point-of-sale equipment, seating, signage, security systems, restaurant decor. The franchise disclosure range for signs, seating, equipment, and decor alone runs from approximately $375,000 to $1,785,000, depending heavily on the restaurant format and condition. Opening inventory, miscellaneous expenses, training-related travel, and working capital add more. And that is before financing changes the economics. McDonald's typically does not just lend you the full purchase price. You may need a commercial lender, a significant cash contribution, personal guarantees, and enough remaining liquidity to survive the opening period. A lender will evaluate the location's historical sales, the value of the assets, your management experience, the restaurant's cash flow, and the amount of your own money at risk. Suppose the total investment reaches $2 million. Putting $500,000 into the deal does not automatically make it safe. You could still begin with $1,500,000 of debt and very little room for an equipment failure, weak sales period, or unexpected renovation. A stronger buyer may put in more cash than the minimum requires and still keep a separate emergency reserve. On paper, that can lower the return during a perfect year because more personal capital is tied up. In real life, it can keep the restaurant alive during an imperfect year. The purchase price is only the first number. Imagine the restaurant looks clean during inspection, the fryers work, the dining room has been remodeled, the drive-thru menu boards are bright, sales records appear strong. Then you discover that several expensive assets are approaching the end of their useful lives at the same time. A commercial refrigerator does not fail politely after the lunch rush. A heating and cooling system does not wait until cash flow improves. A leaking roof does not care that food costs increase this month. A digital ordering system can become outdated even when the physical screen still looks new. The issue is not just that equipment breaks. The issue is throughput. Throughput means the number of orders the restaurant can complete within a certain period. If one station slows down, the entire operation can begin losing capacity. A failed fryer reduces the number of orders the kitchen can produce. The line grows. Drive-through times increase. Employees become rushed. Errors rise. Customers leave or decide not to return. You lose sales while paying emergency repair rates to restore the equipment that creates those sales. Technology adds another layer. The disclosure materials identify separate fees connected to point-of-sale systems, digital capabilities, delivery integration, kiosks, network security, reporting tools, software licenses, data systems, and restaurant support. Individual fees may look small beside a multi-million-dollar purchase, but they show how many systems have to stay connected for a modern McDonald's to operate. Then there is labor. You are not just hiring enough people to stand behind the counter. The restaurant needs enough trained employees in the correct positions during changing levels of demand. Someone has to handle the grill, fries, beverages, order assembly, front counter, dining room, drive-through payment, drive-through pickup, delivery orders, inventory, food safety, cleaning, scheduling, maintenance coordination, management. Removing one employee from a shift might save payroll. It can also slow the drive-through, increase order errors, overwhelm the remaining crew, and cause experienced employees to quit. Adding employees creates the opposite risk. Service improves, but the payroll clock keeps running during quiet periods. That balance changes every hour. At 7:30 in the morning, the restaurant may need speed for commuters. At 2 in the afternoon, the same staffing level could be excessive. At 6:30 in the evening, mobile orders and delivery drivers may arrive while the drive-through is already full. A strong operator is constantly matching labor to demand without damaging service. This is one reason two restaurants with the same annual sales can produce very different profit. Food waste creates another quiet expense. You need enough ingredients prepared to serve customers quickly. Prepare too little, and employees fall behind during the rush. Prepare too much, and food reaches its holding limit before anyone purchases it. The product goes into the waste calculation instead of the customer's order. One wasted item seems harmless. Repeated across products, shifts, employees, and days, it becomes a meaningful annual expense. The restaurant also has cleaning, pest control, grease management, trash removal, landscaping, snow removal in some markets, utility bills, uniforms, payroll taxes, insurance, security, licenses, maintenance contracts, and local compliance obligations. The customer sees a burger, fries, and a drink. You see dozens of systems that must work together for that order to leave the building profitably. So how does the restaurant make money? The basic answer is volume. A traditional McDonald's sells relatively affordable products to a large number of customers throughout several day parts. Instead of depending on a few expensive meals, the restaurant repeats smaller transactions thousands of times. The latest franchise performance figures reported average annual sales of approximately $3,966,000 for qualifying domestic traditional franchise restaurants during 2024. That is an average. It is not a promise. Locations above and below that number can have dramatically different economics. Keep that distinction in mind. $4 million of sales does not mean the owner earns $4 million. It means $4 million pass through the registers before food, paper, employees, rent, fees, advertising, repairs, utilities, debt, reinvestment, and taxes were paid. The restaurant attracts customers with recognizable products and convenience. Breakfast creates revenue during hours when many restaurants are closed or quiet. The drive-thru turns the property into a high-capacity pickup system. Mobile ordering reduces some ordering friction. Delivery reaches customers who may never visit the property, although delivery orders can involve platform costs, different pricing, and additional operational pressure. The most profitable transaction is not always the largest order. A large discounted meal can create impressive sales while using substantial food, labor, packaging, and kitchen capacity. A smaller transaction with higher margin drinks, fries, or other add-ons may produce a better contribution toward fixed costs. Contribution is the money remaining from a sale after the direct cost of producing that sale. That remaining amount helps pay rent, management, repairs, debt, and every other expense that exists even when the restaurant is quiet. This is why product mix matters. Suppose two restaurants each generate $100,000 in weekly sales. The first sells more discounted bundles, uses heavier promotions, experiences higher waste, and schedules extra labor to handle complicated order volume. The second sells more full-priced orders, maintains faster service, and attaches profitable drinks or sides to more transactions. Their revenue is identical. Their cash flow is not. Speed also creates revenue without changing the physical size of the building. If your drive-thru can accurately complete more cars during the lunch rush, the same property produces more transactions. You do not need a second dining room. You need the existing operation to process demand more efficiently. But speed has to be real. Rushing employees until errors increase does not create productive capacity. It creates refunds, replacements, complaints, and repeat work. The economic engine is not burgers alone. It is reliable throughput combined with disciplined cost control. Now consider the payments connected to the franchise system. The disclosure materials list an ongoing service fee of 4 or 5% of gross sales, depending on the circumstances, and advertising contributions of no less than 4% of gross sales. Rent varies by restaurant. McDonald's corporate reporting explains that conventional franchise arrangements commonly include rent and royalties based on a percentage of sales, with minimum rent payments. Notice the words gross sales. The payment is calculated before your profit is known. If the restaurant generates $4 million in annual sales and the service fee is 5%, that fee equals $200,000. A 4% advertising contribution equals another $160,000. Together, those two categories consume $360,000 before rent and before the cost of producing the food. That does not make the franchise arrangement automatically unfair. The brand, operating system, marketing, products, digital infrastructure, and customer recognition are major reasons the restaurant can generate such high sales. But it creates an important asymmetry. McDonald's is generally paid according to sales. You are paid according to what remains after expenses. That is the counterintuitive truth behind the golden arches. A busy restaurant can be an excellent asset for the franchisor and still be a mediocre investment for the franchisee. McDonald's reported that approximately 95% of its restaurants worldwide were franchised at the end of 2025. Its conventional franchise revenue primarily comes from rent, royalties, and initial fees. During 2025, the company reported more than $10 billion in rent revenue from franchise restaurants and more than $6 billion in royalty revenue. The parent company has created a model where franchisees provide much of the restaurant-level operating labor and capital, while the corporation receives revenue tied closely to system sales and property arrangements. Your economics are less predictable. A 5% service fee remains 5% whether chicken prices fall or rise. Advertising contributions continue while you are repairing a freezer. Rent may include minimum obligations that become more painful when sales decline. Suppose your restaurant increases sales by 10% through aggressive discounting. That sounds excellent, but the higher volume requires more food, additional labor, more packaging, and greater equipment use. You also pay percentage-based fees on the additional sales. If the new customers purchase heavily discounted items and overwhelm the kitchen, revenue rises while the percentage of revenue left for you falls. The visible signal is strong. The parking lot is full. The financial result may be weak. The same model works in reverse during a well-managed sales increase. If customer traffic grows without excessive discounts, employees process orders efficiently, and fixed costs remain controlled. Much of the additional contribution can fall toward operating profit. This is called operating leverage. Many costs do not increase at exactly the same rate as sales. Once the restaurant covers its core overhead, additional profitable transactions can produce a large improvement in cash flow. Operating leverage is powerful in both directions. A modest sales improvement can create a strong year. A modest decline combined with higher labor or food costs can erase most of the owner's return. The most dangerous risk is not one expense. It is a chain reaction between sales, labor, service, and customer behavior. Imagine traffic declines by 7%. You respond by removing several labor hours from each week. The schedule looks more efficient, but the remaining crew struggles during unexpected rushes. Drive-through times increase. Order accuracy falls. Online ratings weaken. Experienced employees become frustrated and leave. New employees require training, which places more pressure on the managers who stayed. Now sales decline further. You cut maintenance spending to protect cash. A piece of kitchen equipment begins failing intermittently. Employees work around it, slowing production even more. The restaurant is still open. The sign is still illuminated. Cars still enter the drive-thru. From the outside, nothing appears catastrophic. Inside the financial statements, several moderate problems are reinforcing one another. Sales are lower. Labor efficiency is worse. Repairs are delayed. Customer satisfaction is weakening. Debt payments remain. Minimum rent obligations remain. The service fee and advertising contributions still consume a percentage of every sale that remains. This creates a downward operating cycle. The restaurant may try to recover by discounting. Promotions bring customers back, but the reduced ticket and increased workload place more pressure on margins. If the location cannot produce the orders quickly, the promotion increases congestion without producing enough profit. The real risk appears one step later. Once the business loses experienced managers, maintenance discipline, and service consistency, restoring the restaurant can cost more than protecting those systems would have cost originally. A major brand can reduce some risks. It can also connect your restaurant to events you did not personally cause. The 2024 E. coli outbreak linked to slivered onions served at McDonald's provides a clear example. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention ultimately reported 104 illnesses, 34 hospitalizations, and 1 death across 14 states. Investigators identified slivered onions as the likely source, and the outbreak was declared over in December. Individual franchisees did not select a random local onion supplier or create their own quarter-pounder recipe. They operated inside a coordinated supply system. When the problem appeared, restaurants in affected markets temporarily removed quarter-pounders or stopped using the onions connected to the investigation. The immediate food safety response was necessary. The economic consequences moved beyond the ingredient itself. Customers heard the words McDonald's and E. coli. Some avoided the affected product. Others avoided the entire restaurant. U.S. comparable sales declined by 1.4% during the fourth quarter of 2024, with company commentary and industry reporting connecting the weakness partly to the outbreak. McDonald's later committed $100 million toward marketing and support, including $65 million directed toward the franchisees in the most heavily affected markets. The Quarter Pounder returned nationwide using a different onion supply arrangement. The case shows both sides of the franchise system. You can be exposed to a nationwide brand event that starts far beyond your restaurant. At the same time, you have a corporation with the resources to investigate the problem, change suppliers, communicate nationally, finance recovery marketing, and support affected operators. An independent burger restaurant may avoid a national brand crisis. It may also face a local food safety crisis without a $100 million recovery campaign behind it. Strong operators understand that the logo does not replace management. They begin with location quality, but they go deeper than counting cars on the road. They study traffic direction, breakfast demand, nearby employment, schools, residential growth, delivery patterns, road access, visibility, competition, and the difficulty of entering or leaving the property. A crowded intersection can be terrible if drivers cannot reach the restaurant conveniently. A slightly quieter road can outperform it if the drive-thru is easy to enter. The restaurant serves several day parts, and customers pass the site repeatedly. Experienced operators also protect management depth. One excellent general manager is valuable. A restaurant that depends completely on one manager is fragile. When that person leaves, the owner may suddenly become the emergency scheduler, recruiter, trainer, maintenance coordinator, and conflict resolver. Developing several capable managers raises payroll and training costs. It also prevents the restaurant from losing operational control when one person disappears. Preventive maintenance works the same way. Replacing a worn component before it fails feels like an unnecessary expense during a normal week. During the lunch rush, it can become the cheapest decision you made all year. Inventory discipline improves margins without changing menu prices. Better forecasting reduces shortages and waste. Accurate scheduling places labor where demand actually occurs. Faster order assembly increases capacity. Better training reduces replacements and refunds. None of these strategies creates a dramatic overnight transformation. Together, they determine whether $4 million of revenue produces strong cash flow or constant financial stress. Now put the economics into one complete example. Everything that follows is hypothetical. It is designed to show how the pieces interact, not to predict the performance of a particular restaurant. Assume you acquire the right to operate an established traditional McDonald's. The total investment, including the business assets, franchise fee, closing expenses, initial inventory, training, and immediate equipment work, reaches $2,100,000. You invest $840,000 of your own capital. An outside lender finances the remaining $1,260,000. Assume the loan carries an interest rate of 8.5% and is amortized over 10 years. The annual debt payment would be approximately $187,000. That financing structure is illustrative. McDonald's generally does not provide ordinary financing for the complete investment, and real lender terms would depend on the buyer, restaurant, collateral, and credit market. The restaurant produces $3,900,000 in annual sales, placing it close to the recently disclosed average for qualifying traditional franchise locations. Now the money begins leaving. For this example, assume food and paper consume 31% of sales, or approximately $1,209,000. Labor, including management, payroll taxes, and related costs, consumes 27%, or $1,053,000. Assume the service fee is 5%, equaling $195,000. Advertising at 4% requires $156,000. Assume rent equals an effective 10.5% of sales, or approximately $409,500. That percentage is an illustrative assumption because actual McDonald's rent varies by location and agreement. Utilities, repairs, insurance, cleaning, security, technology, office expenses, local fees, waste, and other restaurant costs consume another 9.5%, or approximately $370,500. After those operating categories, The restaurant has approximately $507,000 remaining before debt payments, owner compensation, taxes, and long-term reinvestment. That number is operating cash generated by the restaurant under these assumptions. It is not your personal income. Subtract the annual loan payment of approximately $187,000. Roughly $320,000 remains. Set aside $100,000 for equipment replacement, remodeling needs, and future capital obligations. You now have approximately $220,000. Suppose you pay yourself a salary of $100,000 for actively managing and supervising the business. That salary is compensation for your work. It is not the return on your $840,000 of invested capital. After the salary, approximately $120,000 remains as pre-tax distributable cash. Your cash return on the invested capital is therefore around 14% before personal taxes, using this hypothetical example. You also received a salary for your labor, and a portion of each loan payment reduced the outstanding debt. But debt principal reduction is not money available for groceries, another investment, or an emergency repair. It increases your equity slowly while the cash leaves the bank account immediately. The return may sound attractive. Now look at what happens when ordinary variables move. In a strong year, sales increase to $4,200,000. The restaurant handles the volume efficiently. Food and paper fall to 30% because waste is controlled. Labor falls to 26% because the crew processes more transactions without matching every additional sales dollar with payroll. Rent, service fees, advertising, and other expenses still absorb substantial amounts. Under a reasonable illustrative cost structure, the restaurant could produce approximately $693,000 before debt payments and owner compensation. After the same loan payment, a $100,000 reinvestment reserve, and a $100,000 owner salary, more than $300,000, could remain before taxes. That is an excellent year. The building looks busy. Employees are stable. Equipment works. Service is fast. Sales growth produces operating leverage instead of chaos. Now use the same restaurant for a difficult year. Sales fall to $3,500,000. That is a decline of roughly 10% from the original scenario, not the disappearance of the business. Food and paper rise to 32.5% because supplier costs and waste increase. Labor reaches 29% because wages rise, and management struggles to schedule efficiently. The effective rent percentage becomes heavier as minimum, and fixed obligations are spread across lower sales. Other operating expenses rise. Then a major equipment repair costs $75,000. Under those assumptions, only about $170,000 remains before debt payments and owner compensation. The annual loan payment is approximately $187,000. The restaurant no longer produces enough operating cash to cover the scheduled debt payment, even before paying you a salary or reserving money for future equipment. You can inject personal cash. You can reduce your compensation. You can delay reinvestment. You can borrow more. You can cut labor. You can hope sales recover quickly. Every choice protects one part of the business by placing pressure on another. The restaurant in the difficult scenario is not empty. It still produces $3,500,000 in revenue. Customers still see cars in the drive-thru. Employees still serve thousands of orders. The investment is struggling because several percentages moved against the owner at the same time. That is the economics of owning a McDonald's. The opportunity can work because you receive one of the world's most recognizable restaurant systems, established products, training, national marketing, purchasing structure, digital infrastructure, and customer demand that an independent operator could spend years trying to build. The same system limits your freedom and collects significant payments from gross sales. You need enough capital to enter, enough liquidity to survive, enough management skill to control thousands of daily details, and enough discipline to protect margin when the restaurant looks busiest. The likely winner is not the buyer who simply loves the brand or sees a crowded drive-thru. It is the operator who understands labor by the hour, food by the portion, equipment by its remaining life, and sales by the amount of usable cash they actually create. A McDonald's is not just a burger stand with a famous logo. It is a high-volume operating machine inside a system that gets paid before you do.